Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And recently, well, not real recently, but not too long ago, I had somebody ask me how to make a pumpkin pie extract. And I thought, pumpkin pie extract? How in the world would a person do that? And then yesterday, something dawned on me. So yesterday, I finally remembered to strain out my cinnamon extract that I started back in July. And if you're interested in the video I showed where I did this, it's the one I did on all about extracts, which I recommend that you watch it anyway because it has a lot of information in it. I'll link to that in the description box down below. So after I strain this out, and right here you can see the cinnamon sticks. I've had used 3 in a little half pint jar, and they're all puffed up still, and this was yesterday. I strained it out, and what I'm going to do with these is actually use them in a tea I'm going to make for tonight, because we always have a herbal tea or spice tea of some kind in the evenings. But anyway, after I did that, I suddenly had an idea of how I think you could make an extract and have it taste a lot like pumpkin pie, or at least be a pumpkin spice type extract that would be good for adding to your coffees along with whatever creamer you want to use in that, whether it be your heavy cream powder that you've pre-blended or your fresh cream, whatever it is that you use in there. So what I've got here is some dehydrated pumpkin that I grew this past summer, and here's the other half of it. It was one of my pie pumpkins, so it's very small. And I decided to try just drying up half of it. I thought about drying some pumpkin this year anyway. Since I haven't done that one yet, and I still have a lot in the freezer. So I'll be dehydrating more of it. I just wanted to start with a little bit to see how well it would dry. This I did actually on top of the wood stove, and it dried up beautifully. And I started drying it this morning, and it's only a little after 11 o'clock now. I think I put it on at 6, and it didn't take long for it to get nice and crisp. And so this is a good texture that you're going to want if you're going to powder it up. But also having it in little pieces like this and leaving it, I wouldn't powder it all up. I'd leave some of it like this. If it does indeed turn out to be a good extract, this is how you're going to want it for making the extract rather than in a powder, because this will be a lot easier to strain out. Unless you don't mind leaving the powder in the extract when you're done doing that. But I do prefer to try to keep it as clean as possible. So I'm going to put in a couple of good sized pinches. My goal is to just make about 8 ounces of extract. And I'm using a little bit bigger jar. Normally I'll use a jar this big, but then when you get done, just like here, this is an 8-ounce bottle, but it doesn't, you see how much I ended up with, because the stuff that you put in there that you're going to strain out does take up some room. So I'm using a bigger jar for this, and I almost want to I might even just, you know what, I'm just going to put that whole thing in there because I want a lot of that pumpkin flavor. And then I'm going to add probably just a single cinnamon stick. Now, I'm going to be doing a video on cinnamon and why I prefer to use Ceylon cinnamon. Cassia cinnamon's good too. I prefer the flavor of Ceylon, but there's health reasons why I use the Ceylon instead of Cassia. So that's what I've got here, is a Ceylon cinnamon stick. And then cloves would be another good option. So I would say 2, 3, 4, 5, however strong you like your clove flavor. I think I got 5 in there. And then another thing, which I don't have yet, is putting in some dried ginger. You could also put in a slice of fresh ginger. I don't have any fresh ginger on hand, but I finally was able to order up just this morning the dried ginger that Costco carries online. I've tried to order it in the past and it's never available to get to my area. Finally it was. And so as soon as that comes in, I'm going to be adding that to the extract. It should probably be here tomorrow or the next day. But I wanted to go ahead and get this started right away, and it's not going to hurt me any to add that ginger in as soon as it comes. So I'll put a little video clip in as well of me showing how much of the ginger I'm going to add to this. So now let's go ahead and make up the solvent. Now the type of solvent you decide to use is going to be entirely up to you. But for what we're doing here, I think using honey as part of your solvent is going to be a really good option, because if you're looking at adding it to something like coffee and you want that sweetness in there as well, you might as well use some raw honey in there. So what I'm going to do, what I find for my extracts I'm really liking, is doing a 1 to 3 part blend. So 1 part honey to 3 parts of homemade wine. No, it doesn't have to be homemade. It can be whatever wine you have. It could also be rum. Rum would be actually a really tasty option to use for the pumpkin, I would think. And it's one of my favorites to use in making vanilla extract, but you can also use vodka. But the homemade wine is cheaper, and it's here. It's all natural and it's organic. And this one in particular I think would be a good option as well, because this was made from the apples from our own tree. So this is my own homemade apple wine. Because I want to make a total of a whole cup. So I'm going to use 3/4 cup of the homemade wine. You could also do half and half. Okay, so there's a 3/4 cup of the apple wine. And now I'm going to add in a 1/4 cup of one of my very favorite honeys, which is the Glory Bee Raw Pacific Northwest Blackberry Honey. Okay, so there's 1/4 cup. I just add it in until it fills up that 1/4 cup. Now you can warm it slightly. I recommend keeping that honey raw, so you'd only want to warm it slightly. However, by simply just leaving it in here and coming back and stirring it every couple of minutes, it will dissolve on its own. And even after you add it to your jar with your other items that you're extracting, you're going to be shaking it periodically anyway, so that honey will dissolve and melt into the wine or rum or vodka, whatever it is you decide to use. Now for a completely alcohol-free version, you can go honey and water. For this, I think it would be good to definitely go at least 50% honey, or maybe 3 parts honey and 1 part water. Either way, it's gonna make it quite sweet though. Glycerin is also very sweet in a way that you can make an alcohol-free. Again, you want to go 3 parts glycerin to 1 part water when you're doing that. And what that water does is it lowers the viscosity and makes it so it extracts better than it would do on its own because it's so thick. I'm going to keep stirring this, and I'll come back when this is ready for me to add to my jar. This is pretty well dissolved. There's probably a little bit left in there, which I'm fine with. However, I just remembered one other thing I wanted to do. I took this vanilla bean, it was a whole vanilla bean, out of one of my most recent vanilla extracts, and I'm going to toss that in there because I think having just a little bit of that vanilla flavor in there would also taste really good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour this right over the top of all that goodness in there, and then stir that up a little bit. And then what you want is a good tight-fitting lid. Preferably you're using a canning jar, or this is actually one of these same honey jars. It's one of the reasons I like these, is because regular mouth canning lids fit on these perfectly. And so I can use this for many things. I don't know that I could can with it. I'm thinking you probably could, but I wouldn't can with it because I'd save my canning jars for that. So anyway, I just want to shake that up really good, and I'm going to leave this out and then shake it for several days. And again, I'll be adding that ginger in there. And what I'm going to do is, normally what I would do is let my extract sit for about 2 months, but what I often find is within the first few days to a week, I can at least get an idea if I'm going to get the flavor I want. And I have found when I started the cinnamon and strawberry extracts a while back, and the peppermint, I tried them within just a few days of using the wine and the honey as the solvent, and was amazed at how strong and intense the flavor was in just a few days time. So I'll get that ginger in there, and then I'll be back in a few days after I've had a chance to see how this is going to look and how it's going to taste, at least within that. But one thing you want to make sure you do is put your date at the top of your jar, because once you stick it away in a pantry, you're not going to always remember to shake it every day. That's why I like to leave it out for at least a week before I put away in a dark pantry. Today's actually 12/30/2020 that I'm shooting this. And then that way you know when you started it, and I recommend leaving it for a full 2 months. But again, you can still taste it early within that first week and get an idea how it's going to turn out. So I'll do that, and I'll be back All right, well, I'm back. This extract has been sitting for about a week now, and boy, is the flavor strong and wonderful already. But I'm still gonna let it sit for, well, at least a month before I try it again. But usually 2 months. Knowing me, I'll set it back in the cabinet and forget about it anyway. But I did put in that piece of ginger. Now, I just bought the dehydrated ginger from Costco, and it does have some added sugar in it. So if that's not the option you want to go for, if you have access to fresh ginger, I recommend getting it, or if you're growing it, you'll probably get an even stronger flavor, but I tell you, this is strong. And so you can actually see the chunk of ginger probably right there, but I'll go ahead and put a little video clip here showing the piece that I put in so you can see how big it was. And I like the flavor. I love the strength of the ginger. It tastes really good. And the other spices I use, the cinnamon and the clove and that little bit of vanilla kind of softens that flavor out just a little bit more as well. And the other thing I did is, you might see that it's a little more full. I went ahead and added some more honey to this. I'm thinking now, because of the way this might be used, this might be a good choice for doing mostly honey. So if you want to make it totally alcohol free, going 3 parts honey to 1 part water, I think would work quite well, and it should store well too without having to refrigerate it, because honey will preserve it, especially if you're doing a 3/4 ratio. Because here's something I forgot about honey, is when you're making an extract, same thing happens when you're doing like a honey garlic infusion, where you're infusing the garlic in the honey will start to get more liquidy as the garlic infuses into the honey and the honey into the garlic. Well, the same thing was happening here. So it would be safe to do that. You would still want to start off with a little bit of water to mix in there to make it a little more runny, but you might not have to. You might even be able to just go all honey. So if this is something you're thinking about adding to your coffee or your cocoa, and you like that sweetness that it's going to have, that might be a real good option. So you'll be making more like an infused syrup. And again, the honey should keep it well preserved. So I went ahead and added more honey, and I might even just top it off with honey so that it's even more syrupy. But you can see how liquidy it is just as it is. It's I think I could top this all the way off with honey, and it's not going to get real thick like that. And again, I consider too the option of the spiced rum. I think that would go very well with this particular blend. And then the homemade apple wine does have a wonderful flavor in there as well. So there's so many options you can use for your extracts. Again, I do recommend you check out my video on all about extracts that I'll be linking to in the description box down below, so you can learn more about different ways to do it and what types to make and so on and so forth. Okay, so I hope you'll give this a try and then let me know what you think. And remember to play with your ratios on your spices. This is very spicy. You might want to put in less cloves and less cinnamon and maybe a smaller piece of ginger than I did. But we like a real power punch of flavor here, so to me this is perfect. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.